Hey, I'm Missy.
And I'm April.
And this is Sheela Na Gig. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for listening. Happy Spooky October.
Yes, happy Spooky October.
Yes, but we have a bonus episode for you, actually.
We do, yeah.
We do. We're going to pop this in for you. But how are you doing, April?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good, but what do we do in this podcast? Each week,
we
present and we explore our own Sheela Na Gig, a woman whose strength and perseverance has led her to greatness, who empowers us.
And maybe it's somebody you know.
Maybe it's somebody you don't know.
Somebody you don't know,
Yeah.
but you should.
Yeah, giving these ladies a little bit more light. That's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. I think we forgot to say that too in our last podcast. But
I think we did. But you know
by
what's
now
funny?
you guys know what we do, right?
You know what's really funny?
What?
Today we're not highlighting a Sheela.
No, we're not.
We're actually not doing that.
No, we have a special bonus.
So we lied.
episode.
Yeah, we lied. We're not doing that this time.
That's true. You're right. We didn't even need to say that, but we did.
No, but we missed it when we were highlighting a Sheela.
Yeah, what's going on with us?
You know, I think it's the cocktails. Missy made cocktails, and now we're just like off in our own little whatever we're doing.
Well, you know, when we get together later in the day, I think a cocktail is necessary.
Definitely necessary.
Don't you think?
Of course.
We often get together kind of earlier in the day, but every once in a while we get together later in the day.
Yeah, it's actually dark outside.
It's actually past April's bedtime. I'm a little bit worried.
No,
She's
it's
okay.
not past my bedtime yet. By the time we're done, it will be past my bedtime.
Oh no, she's gonna have to drive home then.
And yeah, I'm gonna drive home in my sleep.
I told her I have a hard out though at 8 p.m. because I'm having a rehearsal with my jazz band, the Imogines.
Which is good because then Missy can't go down too many rabbit holes.
I get She was so overjoyed when I told her that. She should see the expression on her face. She was like, great.
Okay, so we should just get into it,
We
right?
should just get into it. Let's just get into it. So what are we going to talk about today, April?
Today we are going to talk about rights that women did not have until, drum roll please, the 1970s.
Damn.
Now, if you're a millennial or younger, then the 1970s may sound like ancient history to you.
Yeah.
But for Missy and I, us boomer people...
I'm not a boomer.
You're not a boomer.
I'm a Gen Xer.
You're a Gen Xer.
You're a boomer.
Right.
I'm a Gen Xer.
I'm a Gen Xer.
Okay.
Yeah, you're a Gen Xer. I'm a boomer.
But same. We both grew up in the 70s.
We
though.
did.
Yeah.
Yep. That was like a real era that was in our lifetime.
Absolutely. Yeah. The 70s were...
Yep.
The 70s were my time.
Yep.
That was my childhood.
They were
the
happening.
70s. It was a very different time. It was.
It was.
Yeah.
And for example,
Okay, go ahead.
did you know
Okay. Let's have it.
that until 1974, when we finally, and might I say finally,
Yeah.
had the passage of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, also known as ECOA,
Oh Lordy, thank God.
married women in particular, could not have a credit card in their own name.
Is that so freaking ridiculous?
That
Can
is
you
so
imagine?
freaking ridiculous. And, you know, at first you think, well, first of all, if you had a credit card and you were married, you were Mrs. John Doe.
Right.
Not Missy Joe.
Right. You didn't even have your own name.
Yeah,
No.
you couldn't do that.
No.
But in more insidious than that, you couldn't get any credit on your own. So if you wanted to do something like start a business or buy some property or something
That would
like
be
that,
too powerful.
you can't do it.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And if you weren't married, chances are you needed a male relative to sign for you or vouch for you or somehow help you get credit. And this really comes home to me because my mother was one of the first women ever. Now, I'm not sure how she would know this.
Maybe she was.
Maybe she was. But she swears she was the first woman ever to get a credit card in her own name, going from Mrs. Alvin Jack Braverman to Rosalind F. Braverman. That was her own
Roz,
name.
I love that.
And whether she was the first or one of the first, she was very proud of that.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
That's
it was
super
cool.
That's super cool. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I can't believe I mean, it's just hard to fathom. It wasn't
I
that.
know.
It was in our lifetime.
It was
wasn't that long ago.
I think that's the point for us. It was in our lifetime, and it's so shocking.
I know it is. And along the same lines, women couldn't even open a bank account. So how could they get a credit card if they couldn't open a bank account? They had no credit. They had no viable
There's
credit.
a point.
Yeah. And when it comes to building and managing wealth, American women have come a long way, of course. But prior to 1974, a woman could not open a bank account, apply for a credit card, as we just talked about, or get a home loan without permission and signature of her husband, regardless of her income.
That is just insane. And that's another point, because my mother happened to have been, in my household, the more stable breadwinner, and she made more money than my father throughout their marriage.
Wow.
And yet he was the credible head of household. That's what they called me.
Yeah,
head of household.
Head of household, right. He had the reins,
it's
for
crazy.
sure. It is. They would also discount the value of those wages when considering how much credit to grant by as much as 50%.
Wow. That put women at such a disadvantage.
Yeah. I mean, just for being a woman.
Yeah.
Regardless of the fact, like with your mom, with like Roz, she was earning, twice
money.
as much as your dad.
Yeah,
and yet,
easily.
Yet she had no say in the matter.
Right.
No rights.
It's really shocking.
It's shocking. Yeah, and if the woman didn't have a spouse, as we talked about before, like April said, same thing. She could be refused unless accompanied by a male co-signer. And even when being unmarried was looked down upon, of course, like she was looked down upon for being married.
Right.
So then she could still get refused just because of the fact she was unmarried.
Scandalous.
It was scandalous, yeah. And these days, U.S. women oversee a third of household financial assets, graduate college at a higher rate than men, and hold leadership, if not ownership, roles within businesses, large and small. The country still has a ways to go for that full financial equality, obviously, but that long path to the point has been paved by many trailblazing women and events.
Of which my mother is sure she's one of them.
Yes. I love it. I'm just going to go with that. I'm just going to go with Roz having the first credit card.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that because she was so awesome. And again,
not?
You have to post a picture of your mom. I always talk, she has these great pictures of her mom in business,
She was one of the, if you remember the TV show Mad Men.
Yeah.
She looked like one of the secretaries in Mad Men.
She was adorable. And she wasn't just a secretary. Talk about that.
Well, that's an interesting point, too, because she was technically, that was her label, or executive secretary, but she worked in real estate, and she would help in New York City, and it was commercial real estate, and she would help him formulate the negotiations.
Of course she
did.
And
then they would go together to those meetings, and she would send him signals because she was intuitive. She's a woman.
And brilliant.
And she could observe the body language of the people as they were negotiating a deal and give signals to her boss based on what she was intuitively picking up during the negotiations to help make those negotiations go according to what they wanted to do. And yet, when she retired, she started that job the same day I started kindergarten.
Aww.
And she retired when I was I was turning 30. So she was there for a very long time.
Wow.
And she never, ever advanced from the job title of secretary.
Oh.
So,
that's terrible.
In
for
another
Roz.
world, she would have been an executive herself in her own right.
Of course. And she was. She was. Yeah, shout out to Roz, for sure. What else you got for me, Nicole?
So, believe it or not, before 1978, if you were working and you got pregnant, you could get fired.
Oh my God.
The prevailing societal belief was that working women should stop employment at least after they have children. But as soon as their belly popped and they announced that they were going to have a child, bosses could legally fire their employees.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was very insane. And the legislation, the act that prohibits discrimination based on pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions, including firing, demotions, refusals to hire, or forced leave due to pregnancy, didn't come about until, as I mentioned, 1978. The Pregnancy Discrimination Act finally preserved women's right to work until they were ready to give birth.
That's insane. That reminds me, I may have mentioned this in a prior podcast or whatever, but I'm a musician, and when I became pregnant, I was touring, and I remember saying to my doctor, well, what should I do? And she said, keep touring. It's okay. She said, I wouldn't recommend it that you had never done that before, but that's who you are. That's what you do. Go ahead and keep touring.
Yeah.
So I did.
Uh-huh.
And I remember we were at the House of Blues. We were opening for Duncan Sheik at the House of Blues in Las Vegas. And I showed up, and the promoter actually said, "Oh, did you forget to tell us something, Missy?" I said, "No." He said, "This is a liability." He actually said that to me.
Pregnancy is a liability.
Yeah, because I was pregnant. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I've been, I was so pissed, I remember. And I got on stage that night. I really felt, probably because of him saying that. I just felt
in your head.
It did. And I felt really large for the first time. And of course I had my son like a week later. But I got on stage and I was like, and I felt very large. I was just trying to, I was trying to engage, trying to be there.
Trying to rock out.
Yeah, and as we got on stage and we set up, the announcer actually said, "Okay, folks, she's singing for two tonight. Put your hands together for Breach." And I thought, fuck you.
What a crappy thing to say.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It was rough. It was rough. It was a weird night, and I was just pissed. And I remember there was another gig where we got canceled because they found out I was pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah, this is all...
And what year was that, roughly?
This was in... What year was Nolan born? 2006.
Oh, my gosh.
So it wasn't that long ago. Wasn't that long ago. And, I mean, like, it was just so... It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what else can we be incredulous about? What do you have?
Yeah.
Lay it on.
Okay, I got a good one. I got a good one.
Yeah.
Ready? This is shocking and horrible. Okay.
Yeah.
Up until 1993, women couldn't legally refuse sex from her husband in all 50 states.
Oh, no way.
Oh, no.
Oh, my
You
God.
were his property, and you had to submit. It was submission. They didn't
Submission.
Call it, they didn't call it rape back then. It was just submission.
Submission.
Yeah.
Submit. Wow.
So the distinction dates from the days when women were expected to obey their husbands, and it was based on the idea that men have a property right of sexual access to the bodies of their wives, said Stanford University law professor and sociologist Michelle Dauber. Unfortunately, marital or spousal rape is now illegal in every state.
Thank you.
But it's only been that way since 1993.
1993? Wait a minute. Wow.
Yeah. I know.
Wow.
I know. It's shocking when you do
That
this
is
research.
shocking.
Yeah. Until 1976, every state had a marital exemption
No way.
that allowed a husband to rape his wife without fear or legal consequences.
Oh my
Historically, the legal doctrine of spousal immunity, also known as the marital rape exemption, stated that a husband could not be guilty of raping his wife because her consent was presumed through marriage. This concept, originating from English common law, viewed marriage as a contract in which the wife irrevocably agreed to sexual intercourse with her husband.
Oh my God.
That's
insane.
It is. And prior to the 1970s, marital rape was legal in every U.S. state and only first partially outlawed in Michigan and in Delaware in 1974. Michigan.
Wait, Michigan and Delaware. We don't think of those as the most progressive states.
We
right?
don't. But for some reason, Michigan and Delaware were saying, hey, this ain't right. This ain't right.
That's
Yay.
amazing.
I'm from Michigan. Yay, Michigan. Okay. Yeah. Then wholly outlawed in South Dakota and Nebraska. Again, not
your
what you would think, right?
Liberal states, right?
And that was in 1975. And then there
Where's New York and California?
They're coming, but it's pretty sad.
Uh-oh.
We're getting there.
Uh-oh.
We're going to put a pin in it, April. Hang on.
I love sticking pins in
She
things.
loves putting sticks. Yeah, there we go. The court case, Oregon versus Rideout in 1978, was the first in which someone stood trial for raping their spouse while they lived together. And then in 1984, wait for it, New York Court of Appeals case of People versus Liberta, Judge Saul Watchler stated that a marriage license should not be viewed as a license for a husband to forcibly rape his wife with impunity. A married woman has the same right to control her own body as does an unmarried woman. Yay, Judge Watchler.
Yeah, thank you.
Hooray. But did you hear when that was? That was 1984. That was New York.
That's amazing.
So in Alabama, the marital exemptions were found unconstitutional in 1986.
Wow.
1986 we're talking. Yeah.
86.
By 1993, though, again, all states had withdrawn the marital rape exemptions. The last states to do so being Oklahoma and North Carolina, both in 1993.
Wow.
It's so disappointing.
That is so disappointing.
Yeah. The laws had changed in every state by 1993, and only 17 states was marital rape treated the same, though, as non-marital rape. In other states, these continue to be significantly different in the way marital rape and non-marital rape was treated, such as less severe penalties or excluding situations where no violence was used or shorter reporting periods.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just shocking.
It is. Okay, here I go. I was very disappointed. I was very disappointed and surprised to learn that our home state of California, you ready?
Yeah.
Was one of 11 states that still distinguished between spousal rape and rape up until 2022.
2022?
That was 3 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
After Minnesota had
Wait a minute, we're California.
Yeah, progressive California, right?
Progressive California.
Yeah, and that was after
not.
Minnesota had recently eliminated that exemption in 2019.
Well, we're behind Minnesota.
We're behind Minnesota. We're behind a lot of places.
Yeah.
2022.
That's insane. Wow.
It's just sick. That is fucking sick.
Wow.
So at this point, South Carolina is the only state that still retains a requirement for proof of excessive force or violence in marital rape cases and continues to differentiate between the way marital rape and non-marital rape are viewed and treated.
Wow.
What the fuck is up with South Carolina?
I don't know.
Remind me not to move to South Carolina.
Yeah, well.
That sounds pretty awful.
I don't think you need too strong of a reminder.
No, I don't think so. I don't.
No.
North Carolina. I've been to North Carolina. It's very beautiful. I don't think I've been to South Carolina, actually.
I haven't been to South Carolina.
Yeah, but North Carolina is really beautiful. Anyway, although we've made progress with the exemption of South Carolina, it's still estimated that 10 to 14% of married women are raped by their spouses during their marriage, and marital rape is considered the most underreported form of sexual assault.
Wow. Well, that's not too surprising.
I
but
know. It's just disheartening.
Yeah,
it's
disheartening.
very fucking disheartening.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is.
It's really sad.
Wow.
What do you got, April?
Well, now, there are no specific laws that say that women could not receive direct consultation about their own physical and mental health. But the way that the whole medical field unfolded from, middle centuries, the medical field was very male-dominated.
Yes.
And women were, first of all, barred from attending universities and medical schools. We even featured the first woman who did attend medical school, Elizabeth Blackwell.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that she got into medical school was because all of the male student body that voted her in thought it was a joke when they made the vote.
I remember that. They thought it was a joke.
Right?
Yeah.
So because men dominated the field of medicine, they became the authority of medicine, and they discredited the resources that were most common and available to women. And those were women known as wise women, who dealt with herbs and kind of the folklore of using healers and remedies, and midwives that through the Middle Ages. Mm-hmm. And these informal practitioners who really did provide a wealth of knowledge about women's bodies and herbal remedies and childbirth were mistrusted by the quote-unquote doctors.
They were witches, of course.
But the doctors, being men, were much more comfortable consulting with a woman's husband about her medical and mental health conditions.
Yeah. Wait, remember Mad Men?
Mad Men, yes.
It's a great example of that, right? Remember Betty?
Betty goes to see
cancer. Yep.
And even before that, she went to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist gave the report to Don Draper.
Don Draper.
All
I can think is John Hamm.
Yeah, dreamy so John Hamm, right? But the point being that we had a social norm that made it uncomfortable for men to talk to women directly about their own bodies and their mental health, and a societal norm that made it credible to go through a woman's husband. But it was more insidious than that. Because starting in the 14th century, the persecution of female healers as witches drove many out of the intuitive women healing practices and forced women to rely on male physicians who were often very unfamiliar with female anatomy. And there developed
completely intimidated, I'm sure, too.
And it developed a misogynistic medical theory called hysteria. Yeah. So when male doctors didn't know what was going on in a woman's body, they just chalked it up to she was crazy, she was hysterical.
Yeah, of course.
And that hysteria became just a way to write women off when in fact they were experiencing medical conditions that were just not being documented.
Yeah.
The diagnosis of hysteria was actually removed from American Psychiatric Association manual in 1980.
What?
It persevered for a long time. But in the meantime, while men were really looking at men to understand medicine, so clinical trials typically excluded women from studies. So they would study men to understand things like heart attacks, which both men and women had.
Of course.
But the description of a man starting to have symptoms of a heart attack were very different from women's. And so women would wait for signals that their bodies didn't have and didn't always get attended to or diagnosed quick enough. In 1977, the FDA literally recommended excluding women of childbearing age from phase 1 and phase 2 drug trials because women in that age range might be pregnant and the trials could potentially cause birth defects. So they were systematically excluded from clinical trials.
Oh my God.
So we were never developing medicine based on female physiology, just male physiology.
So fucked up.
The Supreme Court's Griswold versus Connecticut decision in 1965 struck down a state law that prohibited the advising of married people about contraception. This was really critical in upholding women's right to make private medical decisions about pregnancy and pregnancy prevention.
Yeah.
But it was not until Eisenstadt versus Baird in 1972 that the right to contraception was actually extended to unmarried people. Before modern privacy laws like HIPAA, some state laws and medical practices required spousal consent for sterilization procedures even when it was medically necessary for a woman to have them.
Ugh.
So a man could veto his wife having sterilization even if it was medically necessary for her health.
That is so, I've never heard that before, and that is crazy, not surprising, I guess, but that is, that's insane.
And then there's the whole issue of abortion law. And particularly since the overturning of Roe versus Wade in 2022, state laws have interfered with doctor-patient relationships concerning abortion.
Ugh.
There have been many mandatory waiting periods, forcing a delay between a consultation and the procedure, sometimes requiring multiple appointments for women. And oftentimes those waiting periods and multiple appointments were financially prohibitive for a woman to pay for.
Oh.
Biased counseling laws mandated that doctors provide state-scripted information that is sometimes medically inaccurate and designed to dissuade patients from having abortions. And telemedicine bans prevent providers from offering medication for abortions remotely, requiring in-person visits that may be medically unnecessary.
You know what? This would be totally fucking different if men were the ones who got pregnant.
Oh, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Oh, no. Can you imagine?
No.
It would be such a different world. Ugh, God.
In 1990s, managed care plans introduced new limitations on women's ability to directly consult with a specialist, such as an OBGYN, by requiring a referral from the primary physician first. Like a woman couldn't determine when she needed to see a gynecologist.
Oh, my God.
And in response to patient dissatisfaction, many states passed direct access laws that allow women to see OBGYN without a referral. However, some of these laws have provisions that mandate disclosure to a woman's care to her primary care physician, which undermines the confidentiality that women might seek when seeking a gynecologist. Finally, many women today report that they still feel unheard or dismissed by medical professionals. Studies show that women's physical symptoms are still more likely to be attributed to mental health issues.
Hysteria.
Yep. A legacy of that hysteria diagnosis, which has led to misdiagnoses, delays in treatment, and serious conditions in women, such as I mentioned, heart disease and autoimmune diseases.
Yeah, of course. Have you ever been acted like, somebody had ever told you were a hypochondriac, or in your experience?
I didn't personally experience that, but I know many women who did, especially with autoimmune disease, which are very hard to diagnose.
Yes, they are hard to diagnose.
So, just call her hysterical.
No, I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean,
Have
as
you
women,
experienced that?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, obviously, when I gained all that weight and I was and people go, oh, it's menopause.
Yes.
Yeah, but I eat 12 to 1,500 calories a day, and I'm a really clean eater. What's going on,
Right.
And it took a woman doctor, integrative medicine doctor, to solve what was going on, which was my pancreas, right?
Yeah.
So that was really, really vindicating.
Right.
But the other one I want to mention, because I am the queen of TMI, I will tell you, I have a broken vagina, everybody. I have something called vulvar vestibulitis, under a broader term of vulvodynia, which is chronic pelvic pain. And it started in my early 30s. And if you know what it is, it's quite debilitating in terms of having sexual intercourse. And I saw many doctors to try to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
I remember in particular this male doctor doing a whole assessment. He said, you have sexual trauma. You've blocked it out.
Oh my gosh.
Obviously, you've experienced some type of sexual trauma. I don't know if you were raped or sexually assaulted as a child, but you've obviously blocked it off. You have lesions, you have internal lesions, which makes me think that you were, had forcible sex at some point. And I remember just sitting there going, no. Wow. I know that some people block things out. I know this happens, but no. This is not, no. I mean, I knew. And he just kept saying, well, this happens a lot. I would recommend seeing a therapist. And I was so mad. Yeah. And
talk about dismissive.
Oh, very dismissive. And finally, through UCLA, I was able to determine what I had was I remember tears streaming down my face as they told me it had I said, it has a name. It's real. I didn't make it up.
Yeah.
And so I know what that feels like. And I think it happens to women every day.
Yeah. Well, true.
Yeah.
I think it does.
Yeah.
We know it does.
We know it does.
But tell us more. What else do you have that women couldn't do or have any rights?
What don't I have, right?
Since 1970s.
Yeah. Okay. This is an interesting one. Women couldn't be astronauts.
We couldn't be astronauts.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah. That is sad.
Because you think about how many kids want to be an astronaut when they're little.
Yeah.
Both girls and boys alike.
Right.
Because it's just so awesome to go to space and explore.
It is.
And no, they were not allowed. Women would not become a part of the U.S. astronaut corps until 1978.
Wow.
When NASA announced the first class of astronaut candidates that included women, African American men, and Asian American men.
Wow.
So that's really sad. Not just women.
Right.
But minority men.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, that is devastating.
It is devastating.
It's devastating. So one of the 6 women in that group of space shuttle astronauts was a woman named Dr. Sally K. Ride, who became the first American woman in space. And in the 1950s, before any American had been to space, women were considered really good potential candidates for spaceflight. As NASA's first all-male astronaut class was undergoing rigorous medical and psychological tests to make sure that they could survive the shakes and sounds of a rocket launch, Randolph Lovelace, the doctor in charge of the examination, suspected that women might do as well, if not better, than men.
Yeah.
And after all, women on average are lighter, smaller than men. They require less oxygen. So he started testing female pilots at his clinic in New Mexico in 1960, subjecting them to the same tests that their male counterparts faced. And 13 of 19 women passed those tests compared to 18 of 32 men.
Wow.
That's very telling. That is super telling.
Right.
Yeah. But John Glenn, a member of the Mercury 7, America's first group of astronauts formally introduced by NASA in 1959, who just months earlier had become the first American to orbit the Earth, seemed to put this matter to rest in his testimony. He said, quote, "It's just a fact that men go off and fight the wars and fly the airplanes and come back and help design and build and test them. The fact that women are not in this field is a fact of our social order."
Oh, for goodness sake.
That's a good reason. It's just
yeah.
the social order.
Social order.
Yeah.
That explains everything.
Exactly.
Thank you, John Glenn.
Yeah, thank you, John Glenn. Glenn, who had himself gone through Lovelace's testing regime and no doubt knew how difficult it was, acknowledged that perhaps this strict division of gender was an undesirable state of affairs. Some indifference was implied. He didn't impose a program to train women astronauts, but then again he added, I see no requirement for it. We have no existing program concerning women astronauts, nor do we contemplate any such plan.
Well, it is an inconvenience to have to put women's bathrooms into facilities.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Why bother?
I remember reading something too about the fact that women were just more conducive because, their parts are on the inside.
Right.
That was another thing I read about. And I was like, well, that's interesting. So while NASA did not have women astronauts in its early programs, the introduction of space shuttle programs in the late 1970s finally allowed for non-pilot mission specialists. And this created an opening for women to join those astronaut corps. But the first woman in space was a Soviet woman, a cosmonaut named Valentina Tereskova, and that was in 1963.
However, way ahead of us.
Oh, Russia was way ahead of us. Yes, definitely. However, women wouldn't get into space for another 2 decades when Sally Ride flew on the Challenger shuttle's second mission. By 2019, roughly only 12%, we're talking 6 years ago, right? Of all space travelers were women, and as of April 2025, only 105 women had completed spaceflight versus 577 men. That's a little sickening.
That is a little sickening.
Yeah. So we all remember the controversial all-female Blue Origin mission from earlier this year.
Oh, yes.
Right? And according to Gemma Allen from Forbes magazine, visibility alone does not equal power or progress. This mission positioned itself as a leap forward for women without addressing the ground level barriers that continue to keep women out of the aerospace leadership, design, and decision making. If space companies want to prove they're serious about inclusion, we need more visibility, we need structural change, power not just to take part, but to design and to lead. The opportunity to decide who's in the cockpit, who's in the control room, and who takes flight. Only then will women know they've truly taken off. Well put.
Well put.
Well put. Ugh, so disappointing. But don't stop. Don't stop, ladies.
No,
you deserve to be astronauts. Keep going. Keep going. All right, April, what else you got?
Well, kind of along the lines of, education, which can lead to serious STEM careers like becoming an astronaut. Women couldn't be admitted into Ivy League universities until, let me say this. Cornell University was way ahead of the curve in 1872.
Okay, Cornell.
Admitting women. And then we have a little bit of a leap to 1914 when the University of Pennsylvania began admitting women.
That's quite a leap.
Yale didn't start admitting women until 1969.
What?
Princeton University also began admitting women in 1969. Brown University officially became coeducational in 1971 when its women's college, Pembroke, merged with Brown. Dartmouth followed in 72. Harvard kind of got on board and admitted its first female undergraduates in 1977 when it merged with Radcliffe College.
That's shocking.
And good old holdout Columbia University didn't become fully coeducational until 1983.
Oh, that's so depressing.
And the social and political changes of the 60s and 70s played a very significant role in women gaining admissions to these institutions, because many universities began to have to fear that they would lose top male applicants to co-educational institutions because some guys like co-educational institutions. So
Why
they
not,
decided they better start admitting women to their fine universities.
For that reason.
For that reason, yeah. It wasn't so much altruistic as it was self-serving, but hey, women finally integrated into all of the Ivy Leagues.
That is really inexcusable. And again, shocking. And not shocking,
at
the same time, right?
All at the same time.
That's what this episode is all about.
Right.
All right, I got another one.
Yeah.
Until 1971, women could be denied the right to practice law based solely on their gender. And again, this goes right hand in hand with the universities.
Yep.
In the 19th century, courts upheld discriminatory practices, which ruled that states could exclude women from practicing law. The court held that the right to practice law was not protected by the 14th Amendment, and the paramount destiny and mission of a woman was to fulfill the noble and benign offices of wife and mother.
Oh, yes.
How could you be anything else but a wife or a mother? There's no room for anything else.
Well, I guess before the 70s there wasn't.
Right. Well, you think about men. Well, I shouldn't say this, but
I
was going to say.
But I will. Go ahead. Why not?
That might be a little too much for them. But women, I don't know. I full capacity and for women. You're right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, despite these legal setbacks, some women became lawyers by finding loopholes or lobbying for legislative changes. Arabella Mansfield was the first woman admitted to the bar in the U.S., and this was in 1869. Go Arabella. In Iowa. And Belva, I love that their names are Arabella and Belva. Belva Lockwood became the first woman to argue before the U.S. Supreme Court in 1879.
Wow.
Yeah. By 1920, women were admitted to the bar in 50 states, making the legal profession accessible to nearly all women. Kind of. The caveat was that it was nearly impossible for women to find work as a lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
Let's remember Patsy Mink.
Right.
All I could think about was poor Patsy Mink, who was so accomplished.
Getting her law
and
degree.
She couldn't get a damn job.
Nobody would hire her.
No.
Yeah.
No. So you could go through all the hoops, get your law degree, work your ass off, and then nobody would hire you because you were a woman.
Right.
Yeah. So even after bar admission, women faced, again, immense institutional barriers, widespread discrimination. Many law schools denied them admission, and the American Bar Association refused to admit women until 1935. Law firms often refused to even interview or hire women, telling them, I'm sorry, but we want men.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, men.
Let's not mince words.
Ugh, God. And women are so much more diplomatic. I'm sorry, but in general, I'm going to say women are way more diplomatic. But anyway, sorry. I digress. The 1970s, of course, marked a pivotal shift with the civil rights movement, spurring a new wave of activism that challenged entrenched sexism in the legal field. This led to lawsuits that forced major law firms to address discriminatory hiring practices and to create new actions and amendments, and consequently a dramatic increase in the number of women attending law school. So just to include a few things, in the 1970s law school, there was persistent discrimination. It prompted some female law students in the 1970s to take legal action. They filed that class action lawsuit against several major New York law firms, and they won the case, forcing the firms to adopt new non-discriminatory hiring guidelines for female associates. The 1972 amendments to Title VII expanded the scope of Title VII to cover smaller employers, including many law firms. It also prohibited law schools from openly refusing to interview or hire women during placement. But hard to believe that it wasn't until 1972 we're talking about. And now it's interesting because it seems that women are actually leading in the law field.
Yes.
According to the American Law Association, in 2016, women became a majority of law school students. In 2020, women became a majority of general lawyers in the federal government. In 2023, women became a majority of law firm associates. In 24 and 25, women will likely become a majority of full-time law school faculty members. However, not to end on a bad note, but I think it's important to mention that we, of course, still have a really long ways to go, right? Yeah. The problem being that even though we've made these strides, there's still a significant gender pay discrepancy for women lawyers.
Yes, I was going to add that, so I'm glad you mentioned
Women are still earning less than men, even when accounting for factors like experience and hours worked.
Yeah.
Studies show that women earn roughly 80 to 94% of what men do, and this gap persists across all career levels, actually, from associate to partner, and that is just messed up. And we need to get that fixed.
It is a fact, and while the wage gap is decreasing, I hate to say it, but when women enter male-dominated fields, the value of those salaries tend to go down.
And you know a lot about that.
I do. Yes. In my former life, that was part of my passion work. So yeah, pay equity. But on that same note, if women can't become attorneys, they also can't become judges.
Oh.
Because the ability to practice law is a prerequisite to becoming a judge.
This is true. Yep.
So in 1873, the Supreme Court ruled in Bradwell versus Illinois that women did not have a constitutional right to be admitted to the bar, effectively blocking them from the judicial profession.
Oh my God.
Historically, women were generally barred from holding public offices, a prohibition enforced both directly by law and indirectly by excluding women from the right to vote or practice law. Some state constitutions explicitly restricted public office holding to men. Other states created an indirect barrier by allowing only male voters to hold office. And women's advocates began campaigning for the right to hold office around the mid-19th century. And some women managed to hold judicial posts in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly in Western states, where women's suffrage was a little bit more advanced.
Mm-hmm.
Florence Ellenwood Allen was appointed to the Federal Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals in 1934.
Go Florence.
Becoming the first woman to serve as a judge in a federal court. But it wasn't until later half of the 20th century that significant numbers of women began to really enter the federal judiciary. The first female U.S. District Court judge was named Bernita Sheldon Matthews, and the first woman on the U.S. Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor, was right. She was not appointed until 1981.
Oh, sick.
So that's what I have on women becoming judges.
Oh my gosh.
What do you have, Missy?
All right. Women couldn't report sexual harassment in the workplace.
Ooh.
No, it wasn't a real thing. There's no such thing as sexual harassment.
Well,
how can there be sexual harassment if your husband's allowed to rape you?
right.
Right?
Good point.
Yeah, good point, right? So sexual harassment in the workplace is not a recent issue, but for centuries there was no legal recourse for victims. It is only, again, in the last 50 years that sexual harassment has become recognized as an obstacle to a safe working environment for all employees. For hundreds of years, it was nearly impossible for a woman to successfully bring claims of rape or a lawsuit for damages against an employer who harassed her or demanded sexual favors.
Wow.
It's part of the job. Just part of the job. Those who complained discovered that sexual predatory behavior on the job was dismissed as trivial and harmless. Boys will be boys.
Boys will be boys, they say.
God. Women barely talked openly about the issue, although the situation only became more pressing as their participation in the workforce increased throughout the 1960s and 70s. So the turning point finally came in the mid-1970s as women's liberation began to challenge the justice system, thankfully, as well as a culture at large that failed to recognize women's consent, which was a huge, huge thing. So the campaign against sexual harassment was the natural extension of the grassroots anti-rape and anti-battery movements, which grew out of consciousness-raising sessions in which women shared personal stories and realized they were not alone in their experiences. Imagine that.
Imagine that.
The phrase sexual harassment was not coined until 1975.
Yeah, it didn't exist before that.
No, it really didn't. By a group of women at Cornell University. Interesting, we just talked about Cornell being one of the more progressive universities that allowed women to attend.
The first to allow women
right?
Of the Ivy League.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah, so they were,
schools.
Thank you, Cornell, for being progressive. So this group called themselves Working Women United. And at a speak out event they had that was hosted by a lot, many women, anything from secretaries, there were mailroom clerks, filmmakers, factory workers, waitresses. They all shared their stories, revealing the problem, and that problem extended beyond the university setting. These women spoke of masturbatory displays. That would be masturbation displays. Threats and pressure to trade sexual favors for promotions. Feminist attorneys pushed the issue forward. Catherine McKinnon helped develop key legal theory by naming and distinguishing 2 types of harassment, including those which produce, number 1, a hostile working environment for women, and then number 2, the quid pro quo type, in which career opportunities are offered in exchange for sex.
Yeah. No pay, no play.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Actually, no play, no pay, I guess.
Yeah, it's freaking devastating. So
Yeah.
Eleanor Holmes Norton, the director of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which we've talked about here, was also an influential figure in overhauling workplace equality, and she created laws to recognize sexual harassment as a violation of women's rights. So by 1977, 3 court cases finally confirmed that a woman could sue her employer for sexual harassment under the Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. We just talked about Title VII being amended, so that was part of that. And the act had made it illegal, once amended, to discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Although sexual harassment is a form of sexual discrimination, it took many years for U.S. courts and legislation to define it and create laws that would protect workers, unfortunately. In fact, the first sexual harassment cases were not brought about until the 1970s, the mid-1970s.
Wow.
Yeah. So today, the EEOC, which enforces federal discrimination laws, defines sexual harassment as, quote, unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical harassment of a sexual nature. With that said, here's a timeline of some of the most significant events and laws that help define what is today classified as sexual harassment in the workplace. In 1974, we have Barnes versus Train, which is commonly thought to be the first sexual harassment case in the U.S. It's tried in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. Barnes, who at the time worked for the EPA's Equal Opportunities Division, claimed that her job was eliminated because she rejected her supervisor's sexual advances. The court rules that there was no discrimination on the basis that the supervisor found Barnes attractive and felt rejected, but she would not have sex with him.
What was
Well,
she
of course.
thinking?
He had every right. He had every right to feel that way. Wow. Wow. Side note.
Yes.
I worked for Pizzeria Uno in West Hollywood.
Uh-huh.
And this is back in like the mid-90s. It was my first job when I moved to LA. And there was a manager there. His name was Peter.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter he was married, he had kids, he would flirt with me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day he said to me, you know what, miss? You're totally my type. If I wasn't married, I would totally go for you. And I said, you know what, Peter? That makes me want to vomit a little bit. Could you please keep those thoughts to yourself? And that was fucking it. He was like, how dare you? That is so mean. Why would you say that? You want to vomit? And I was like, I'm sorry, but that is just really inappropriate. You're married, you have children. I don't want to fucking hear about your type and your desires, and like, fuck that. Yeah. And after that, it was all fucking downhill. Wow. And he fired me because I didn't thoroughly scrape out a ranch container during a huge rush.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to go to court. To get my unemployment. Mm-hmm. And they ruled in my favor, and he fucking appealed it. Dude had such a vendetta. He lost again. Well, good. But that was a perfect example. Yeah, a perfect example, right? Yeah. So I have my own little example. Do you have an example like that, Adrian?
I do. I had a boss grab my ass. And what was really sad at that time was I just froze. I didn't know what to do. And I asked a friend, later, what should I have done? And she said, because I didn't want to lose my job.
Of course.
It was a really good job.
Yeah.
But, and she gave me really good advice. She said, just say, don't do that. And, fortunately, he didn't do it again, and I never had to say it, but I think I was horrified by my own freezing as much as I was horrified by him grabbing me.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, that's, and that we had to put up with that. I think I mentioned, too, that I had a boss. I worked at a place called the Red Coat Tavern, and Mr. Brown, that's what I talked about, wearing our little, like, polyester, like, red, white, and blue. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And little go-go boots. And he would come around and pinch all of our asses. And we'd all be like, disgusting. Oh, Mr. Brown. Right. I would go hide. Yeah. I would go hide every time. It just fucking so bad. But I want to get back to that Barnes case because in 1977, she just continued to pursue it. Even though she didn't win the first time, she came back and she said, no, this is not right. So in 1974, the case was actually reversed by the U.S. Court of Appeals. Woo! And it determined that Barnes was indeed retaliated against by her supervisor and that he sexually harassed her, which violates the Title VII of the Civil Rights of 1964. And Barnes was awarded $18,000 at that time to cover back pay and lost promotions. Wow. I don't know how much that was in that day.
It's
never enough.
It's not a lot.
It's never enough. That's the point. But thankfully today, there are now laws in place that protect women and all workers from sexual harassment in the workplace. Consequently, employees are becoming more empowered to speak out and take action against their harassers. However, sexual harassment continues to be an ongoing issue. In fact, I wanted to share a few workplace harassment statistics for 2025. 91% of U.S. workforces experience some form of discrimination. 78% of all workforce has experienced sexual harassment. 78% of all workplace sexual harassment cases filed to the EEOC are from women. In 2023, the EEOC recovered about $664 million in claims for workers who are victims of workplace harassment, which is a 30% increase, actually, from 2022.
Oh, that's so disappointing.
Yeah, so we can be better.
We can be
better. Let's be better. We need to be vigilant. We need to speak up, ladies.
Yeah.
What else you got, April?
Well, I'm going to close with something on the theme of we could do better.
Yeah, we could do better. What is it?
A woman couldn't be CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
What?
And before I go back in time, I want to say, I'll just start with the bad news at first. As of January 2025, only 11.6% of women served as CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. And while this does mark progress, the rate of change has been so slow, with the percentages of female CEOs holding steady around 10% for several years before this recent little tiny increase. Ugh. While there were never a specific law that prevented women from becoming a Fortune 500 CEO, historically women have faced factors like bias, lack of sponsorship, and access to sponsors in informal settings, things like golf courses and men's club, where men mentored other men and helped boost them up. It's the old boys network. Missy is sticking her fingers down her throat.
Yeah. Boys Club.
It's the boys club of networking that women were not privy to. And they were also held to different standards of men than men, higher standards than men. Women, for example, had to stop out of the workforce if they were ever going to have children, and heaven forbid, stay at home with a newborn infant. Things like getting married and having a family was really held against women, and I'm not sure it still isn't a problem.
Right.
In 1972, when Katharine Graham took the leadership over for the Washington Post after her husband committed suicide, she became the first CEO of a Fortune 500 company, 1972.
Oh my God.
But it took decades before more women reached that position. The next two were Marion Sandler in 1981, heading Golden West Financial Corporation and World Savings Bank, and Linda Wachner in 1986. She was the head of Warnaco Group, Inc. The trend towards appointing female CEOs began to accelerate in the years following 1997, leading to a significant increase in numbers by 2000. Notable women include Mary Barra, General Motors, Karen Lynch, CVS Health, and Jane Fraser, Citigroup. And what makes me proud of those women were General Motors and CVS and banking, Citigroup, were pretty historically male-dominated fields. Yay. So leading major companies that were traditionally male-oriented did appoint CEOs that were women.
Yeah.
In 2018, Dante Robinson and Rashawn Nelson, two black men, walked into a Starbucks Philadelphia store for a business meeting, and both of those men were soon in handcuffs under police arrest. Their charge was trespassing. The incident made national headlines. I don't know if you remember this.
No, I don't.
It called it back to me. I do remember hearing about this, and it brought center stage the issue of racial profiling. It was a PR disaster for Starbucks and an opportunity for then female COO Rosalind Brewer and her team. Because following this incident, Brewer closed all of the Starbucks across the U.S. and conducted racial bias training, inclusion training, and empathy training for all of their employees.
That's so amazing.
Today, Rosalind Brewer is the CEO of Walgreen Boots Alliance and one of 4 Black women to lead Fortune 500 companies. The following statistics demonstrate the underrepresentation of Black women in Fortune 500 boardrooms. Since 2000, the number of female Fortune 500 CEOs hit an all-time high of 41 in 2021. In the same period, there have only been 4 Black women Fortune 500 CEOs.
Gotta fix this.
Right?
Yeah.
For the first time in 2021, 2 Black females are at the helm of Fortune 500 companies at the same time. Roz Brewer and Thrasasun, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, Thasunda Brown Dockett. With 2 Black women running Fortune 500 companies out of 41 women executives in 2021, they all represent 4% of female Fortune 500 leaders.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad it's getting better.
It's getting better. There is progress.
Let's just also point out that our first woman millionaire in the U.S.
Yes, was a Black woman.
woman.
She came from poverty. She did not have the benefit of education.
Yeah. Madam C.J. Walker.
Madam C.J. Walker. She also didn't have the benefit of the old boys club and sponsorship.
No,
in fact,
she did not.
Her husband undermined her authority, and he tried, and she was actually a much stronger businesswoman than he was.
And we see this very
entrepreneur.
often. I hate to say we see this very often, but ladies, we got to make some changes here. We can keep going with this, right?
We got to keep going.
We've got to recognize these things. Like I said, I was shocked in the research of this episode to find out that so many of these changes were way too recently.
Way too recently. In our lifetime.
In our lifetime. Like we need to keep pushing. We need to keep fighting. And I just think that's important. Obviously, we have this podcast for a reason.
Yes.
So rally with us. Give us your comments. Give us your questions.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Keep fighting.
Yes.
Keep fighting, ladies.
Fight on.
All right. Till next time. Bye.
Till next time. Bye.
Unabashed in your clothes.